Hello everybody, Michael the Librarian of Magic here, finding and cataloging the magical and pointing you to it. Today is October the 25th. We're already less than a week away from the end of Halloween, the end of the second season of my Drawing a Villain or Halloween treat every single day for the month of October. There's a truck driving by outside, and I'm back again with another Halloween treat and another Halloween drawing for you today. The same disclaimers on these as always apply. I talk about that in detail in the first video in this series, where I get these drawings from and that they're not original and so forth. So if you're interested in that, check that video. And without further ado, today's drawing is Maleficent from 1959's Sleeping Beauty. This was really fun to draw, and it came out really well, I think. This is based on, I've got this merchandise. Last year Disney put out these walkway lantern bags for Halloween time, and her image is on one of those, so I just reproduced it off of that. And one of the great things about this drawing that's sort of fun from a creating technical standpoint that made it really fun to do is this is one of those drawings that looks like it's really difficult and complicated to produce, but it actually really isn't that much, because most of it are, the bulk of the robes and everything like that, which weren't all that difficult to get right. Some of it just involves making sure you have straight lines and stuff, but compared to some of the other ones I've done, this one wasn't too difficult, but it looks like it is, which is nice, because, it makes it look like I put in a bunch of work that I really didn't. This probably took me 15 minutes to do. So that was really fun to make. As I mentioned before, Maleficent is from 1959's Sleeping Beauty. In the film, she refers to herself as the Mistress of all evil, and she is one of Walt Disney Animation's certainly more evil, powerful villains. She has extreme amounts of power that she can use at her whims, and magic and sorcery and all of that kind of good stuff. She was voiced, I mentioned this in the Madame Leota video, she's voiced by Eleanor Audley, who was the voice of Madame Leota in the original Haunted Mansion attraction. And Eleanor Audley was also the voice of Lady Tremaine in Cinderella. She did such a convincing job in that Walt Disney himself specifically wanted her to voice this character as well, because she sort of has a really commanding but also simultaneously elegant voice that she was chosen for this role as well, and she just really knocked it out of the park. She was also used as a live-action reference in another one of those instances where they filmed the actors doing some of the roles and costume and everything like that in order to get reference for the animators to be able to use. And she was used for that as well. I found a few pictures of some of the stills of her doing that, and I'll show you one of those right here. So, as you can see, she was used as a reference for the animators to be able to use. Principally, one of Disney's nine old men, Mark Davis, worked on this character and was a principal animator and character design for Sleeping Beauty, but also Ivan Earle worked on this, and he's kind of a Disney legend. Mostly he's a background artist, but he also worked in developing a lot of the characters for this film. And his work on and he also did pretty much all of the backgrounds in this film as well, and his work on this is particularly stunning. If you want to see a good example of how backgrounds can enhance an animated movie and just sort of the artistry of that, and good examples to look for background work, look no further than Sleeping Beauty. The backgrounds in this film are stunning. I mean, Walt Disney Animation Studios, with the technology they had at the time, using the multiplane camera and all that stuff, were absolutely just at the peak of their capability in terms of what they could do with backgrounds and environments and all that sort of stuff. And Ivan Earle really outdid himself with the backgrounds in this film. And so much so that I read somewhere, researching for this video, that the backgrounds were so detailed and beautiful that it sort of restricted the characters' movement and what they were able to sort of do in the foreground, because they didn't really want to change the background. And so it sort of limited what the characters could do, particularly Maleficent. In the context of the film, I think they sort of, made it like her costume sort of limited her movement a little bit. But really, in reality, the backgrounds were so detailed that they didn't want to make it look visually messy by having the characters move in certain ways. So that's one of the reasons that her, movements became sort of elegant and restrictive and things like that. And then also, as I mentioned before, Eleanor Audley's performance probably, made Maleficent into the character that she ultimately became. Originally, with Mark Davis and everybody, they wanted to go with more of an old hag, kind of Snow White approach. And after the backgrounds and all the stuff I just talked about in Eleanor Audley's performance, they went with a much more beautiful, elegant character, because all of those things sort of fell into place together. The suggestive movement of Maleficent, with it being sort of restricted by the costume, also ended up inspiring Andreas Deja when he was animating Jafar in Aladdin. He was sort of taking a similar approach about having the costume sort of dictate the movement of the character. So there's sort of some interesting things that came out about this. Additionally, with some of the finer details of Maleficent, Mark Davis was looking at medieval art at the time that they were figuring out how to get inspirations for this character, and saw a religious figure in this robe that had the ends of it sort of looked like flames. And so that's how this ended up coming to be, this sort of flame robe. And then he also decided that he wanted the lapels on her or hood to be inspired by the wings of a bat, and also her horns to be inspired by the horns of the devil. So all of these sort of things came together to end up creating this character. And so this is just one of those joint efforts of actors and performers and background artists and character modelers and medieval artists and all of that stuff sort of coming together in one giant ball of inspiration, and this character coming out of it. And she's just one of the greatest of all time. I mean, really, she's everything you want in a fairy tale villain. She's everything you want in a Disney villain. She's really one of those ones that's sort of at the top of the heap, and it's interestingly taken me a long time to get to her, but I've just kind of been waiting in order to do her. So that's been really fun. In the original fairy tale by Charles Perrault, there are some differences, and I think Sleeping Beauty was originally used as like a ballet, but there's been a bunch of different versions. But anyway, Maleficent in those versions was an evil fairy called Carabosse. I think I'm saying that correctly. And in one major version, she just sort of appears and sort of curses Aurora and then goes away, and she never comes back again in the rest of the story. In a separate version, sort of a similar thing. She's not really shown to be evil. She's just sort of old and cranky and shows up to be cursing Aurora, and then she goes back to her sleep, that she's like been interrupted from her sleep, and she just goes back to doing that. In that same version where she is going back to being asleep, the character of Carabosse doesn't die. She doesn't have any sort of battle with the prince. She just sort of goes away. And it's shown that she lives in this tower up above the castle. And it's not that she wasn't invited by the king or anything like that, like in the Disney movie, but that the villagers just sort of assumed that she was cursed to not be able to come, or that she might have been dead, because supposedly she's been up in this tower for 50 years and nobody has ever seen her. So they just figured she was dead or cursed, and when she shows up, it's just sort of a surprise for everybody. But they don't think she's evil. They just think that she's this kind of cranky old lady. Whereas in the Disney movie, it really sort of heavily implies that King Stephen is purposefully not inviting her to come to Aurora's christening, because she's evil. He doesn't want her there because she's evil. Um, she is, and a few other tidbits, she's one of the only Disney villains to say the word hell, also with Claude Frollo, who sings the song Hellfire. But there's a line in Sleeping Beauty in 1959 where Maleficent summons up the powers of hell, and she says so. You can find her in Disney parks. She's not terribly rare. She's definitely featured in some of the parades and the Phantasmic show. So in that sense, you can see her every single day in the Disney parks if you're able to go see those parades and shows when things are operating as they normally do. Then you would be able to see her in that sense. But also during Halloween, when things are typical, you can see her. She's a meetable character. Because she's such a prominent villain, she's always featured in those shows and Halloween specials and all of that sort of stuff. In addition to being voiced by Eleanor Audley in the original film, she's voiced these days by Suzanne Blakesley. I talked about her in the Madame Leota video because she also voices the modern Madame Leota. She's sort of taken over where Eleanor Audley left off. She voices the modern Lady Tremaine and all that kind of stuff. And of course, in the live-action movies, she's portrayed by Angelina Jolie. And then also in the Descendants movies, the Disney Channel movies, she's portrayed by Kristen Chenoweth. I have seen those movies. They're a little more of a campy take on the characters, on the villain characters. But if you can get yourself into that sort of high school musical, teen-oriented musical zone of that wavelength of what they're going for, then they're not without their charm. They've got some things to recommend about them, and the people in there are very talented. They just operate on sort of a campier level, so you have to sort of know what you're getting in for. And then another little interesting tidbit, too, about voicing and acting is that when Maleficent dies in the end of the movie, her dying scream is actually the exact same audio that was used when the old hag dies in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, when she falls off the cliff. So technically speaking, the dying scream of Maleficent was played by Lucille Laverne, who played the evil queen Grimhilde in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, even though Lucille Laverne had passed away like over a decade before they made Sleeping Beauty. They just repurposed the audio because they liked it. And then the sort of final tidbit, especially about this drawing, is the raven here, which was really fun to draw. It's actually probably my favorite thing about this drawing because I like ravens a lot, and it was fun to produce him, and he's just a cool-looking character. A lot of people may not know, fans will definitely know, big fans of the movie and the characters will definitely know, the raven's name is Diablo. And he features heavily in the movie. In fact, she maybe loves Diablo more than anybody else. At one point in the movie, spoiler alert for a super duper old movie, he gets turned into stone, and she flies into an emotional rage when she finds out about that. So, she definitely cares for her bird more than just about anybody else, more than her goons, who she hates because they're incompetent, and all that kind of stuff. She's very flamboyant and emotional and evil and interesting. She's one of the more complex villains, but at the same time, she's also highly likable because she's such a fairy tale archetype that she's sort of fulfilling. And the movie is such a wonderful fairy tale spirit to it that it's just highly watchable. And weirdly, I think it other than Maleficent being sort of the popular draw that comes out of that movie, I think it ends up being the most memorable thing about it. But I think the movie is slightly underrated. Not underrated in the same way that maybe like The Hunchback of Notre Dame is underrated. It's not like totally glossed over. I mean, people know the movie. It's iconic. But compared to like a Cinderella or a Snow White or Beauty and the Beast or something, I think Sleeping Beauty kind of falls between the cracks there in terms of the Disney princess popularity and so on. So I think that this one is one of my favorites in terms of the fairy tale lane that Disney gets into sometimes, and definitely Maleficent has a lot to do with that, and Diablo. So that's a bunch of stuff about Maleficent. I hope that you enjoyed the drawing. if she's one of your favorite characters, I hope that, that was fun for you to check out. Thanks as always for watching these. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing down below. Feel free to let me know if you've got any comments about these. I'll be back again tomorrow with another Halloween drawing, another Halloween treat for I guess there's only maybe like 6 days left in the month, but I'll be back for every one of them. So until then, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.